Part 2. Jericho is flat out furious that MVP beat him. He's just furious and he blames it on Steamboat. Irrationally, he lost cleanly, he has no reason to blame it on Steamboat, and yet he does. Who doesn't hate that guy? So Jericho is the champion, he lost to MVP cleanly, he blames it on the new GM that he doesn't like, and then he declares that he will make it his mission to get drafted to SmackDown. The draft is next week, and he's going to make it his mission to make sure that he ends up on SmackDown. That this is his last week on Raw. Even if he doesn't get drafted, he will make sure that he gets traded, that he gets a SmackDown contract, whatever it takes to get off Raw and come to SmackDown. Now Steamboat just wants to be friends. Steamboat is still naive. He just wants to be friends. He just wants to get along with Jericho. So when he comes out and when he comes out and he responds to Jericho's declaration, he doesn't say, okay, don't let the door hit you on the ass on the way out. He just says, okay, please think about what you're saying. You're the WWE champion. If you move to SmackDown, you're my #1 guy. You can't move to SmackDown. You want to be here on Raw. You're going to get treated right. I promise you. You lost fair and square to MVP. It's not my fault. But you cannot go to SmackDown. You have to stay here on Raw. And trust me, I have nothing against you. You're my #1 guy. I am a fan of yours. Do not say that you want to go to SmackDown. You don't want to go to SmackDown. Jericho just refuses to listen, and for all intents and purposes, you think this is his last night on Raw. And throughout the week, throughout the night of this night, he is calling up the SmackDown general manager and Vince McMahon, saying, okay, if I don't get drafted next week in the actual draft, I want the trade made. I want a SmackDown contract after me, whatever it takes to get off this show. Then the draft comes around, and yes, Jericho is traded to SmackDown in this draft. Drafted to SmackDown, not traded, drafted. In the random draft, he is drafted to SmackDown. The draft is a little more interesting now because there's a storyline affixed to it, and you don't expect Jericho to move because that's what the heel wants. So Jericho moves to SmackDown. He's happy. Steamboat is just dejected. He cannot believe it because he announced to Jericho on the week that Jericho declared he wanted to go to SmackDown, that at Backlash there was going to be a fatal 4-way match for the WWE Championship. That he was going to just steal the show. He was going to be in the best match ever. But Jericho does not listen. He wants on SmackDown. He gets his wish, and he goes to SmackDown that week. And you're led to believe, okay, Jericho's on SmackDown. You know, Steamboat, just get on with it. You've dodged a bullet by Jericho going to SmackDown, but then your heart aches because on the next week on Raw, Steamboat announces that he managed to trade Jericho back to Raw. Against Jericho's will, Jericho is now back on Raw because Steamboat arranged a trade with the SmackDown general manager, and now Jericho is back on Raw. He is furious, and after going back and forth with Steamboat in the opening promo of that Raw, this is the last Raw before Backlash, he puts the walls of Jericho on Steamboat, and Steamboat still does not respond. He does not respond. Your heart aches for him. You take one look at Steamboat after this, and your heart is aching for him. You want him to fight back against Jericho, but he just won't do it because he wants to be the general manager that everybody loves. He just doesn't respond to pressure. He just does not respond to pressure. You just want him to retaliate against Jericho, to put Jericho in all these horrible situations, to make life as hard for Jericho as he possibly can, but he just can't do it. He just can't find it within himself to do this. So we go on to Backlash, fatal 4-way match. The opponents, apart from MVP, because MVP is still the main guy who was trying to keep Steamboat's head together and keep him from having a huge panic attack. That is emphasized during these weeks, even though Steamboat Jericho is the main feud, so to speak. But the Backlash match is Jericho versus MVP versus Triple H and Kofi. The other 2 points, not really important. And Jericho wins. Jericho retains the championship via dirty finish. Maybe through interference by one of the people who agrees with him about the GM thing, maybe by an object attack. It doesn't really matter. as long as it's a dirty finish. So Jericho has managed to keep his championship, and even though he's on Raw, he is still the WWE champion. So the fans are still, they wanted Jericho gone and they wanted him not to be the champion, but they're not getting any of that. And you just want Steamboat to end this nightmare, and it's just not happening. You know, I think that's just a great way to get Steamboat, get the fans behind Steamboat. They want him to react, but he just cannot find it within himself to do it. You take one look at Ricky Steamboat and your heart ache. He is the sympathetic character. Night after Backlash, Jericho was celebrating, and then he announces that he took the wrong approach. Instead of trying to leave Raw, he should get Steamboat off of Raw. That's what he's going to try and do. That's his goal. So he announces that, I don't care that I'm the champion, I don't care that I am the best thing this show has on it, I am not appearing on Raw until I get it, so Steamboat is gone. He is going on strike from Raw, and during this strike I will do everything in my power to make sure Ricky Steamboat is gone, and at the end of that I will come back and I will ride this giant blaze of glory. So that's what he wants. He is going to strike from Raw, and he is going to do everything he can to make sure Steamboat is sacked by any means necessary. Now Steamboat, he tries and to get Jericho to reconsider, he just won't do it. The week after Jericho announces that he will not appear on Raw, he goes to Vince. He goes to the board of directors in Stamford, Connecticut. He even goes to the employment equality agencies, just trying to find someone to complain to. You know, this is classic crybaby Jericho that no one just cannot hate. No one cannot hate this guy because he just will not shut up. He complains to everyone he can get his hands on, and eventually we get a whole night of these promos throughout the night, and then at the end of it, Jericho announces in jubilation that he has managed to get the services of an employment inspector who will appear on Raw the next week to put Steamboat in a position of, is he really up to this? You know, can he really do this? Someone who will assess Steamboat's performance and decide if he is going to be the general manager in the long run. And Jericho is very happy about this because he thinks he has got Steamboat in a corner. And this appearance by the inspector happens on the last Raw before Judgment Day. Judgment Day, let's assume that it is the pay-per-view after Backlash, even though I think it's been changed. I'm not actually sure, but let's assume that for this, it is Judgment Day. So on the last Raw before Judgment Day, we have this employment inspector showing up. And he is a fair guy. Let's just put that out there at first. He's a fair guy. He's not out to get Steamboat for little minor things. So it looks like Steamboat will get off scot-free. The problem is, Jericho is with this employment inspector and will not leave them alone. So when this inspector is watching Steamboat do his thing, solve these problems, and he's doing a fine job, Jericho is by their side saying, no, that's wrong, he should have done this, he should have done that, and that's how this is entertaining, because Jericho is there making all these irrational complaints. Once again, crybaby Jericho. So there it is. And this employment inspector is like, what are you talking about, Jericho? This guy's a fine general manager. I don't know what you're seeing in this guy because I don't see how bad he's doing. But Jericho just irrationally saying, no, he's horrible. Like, that shouldn't be what he done. He should have done this thing. He should have done that thing. You know, all this irrational stuff. And then it is announced that the employment inspector announces that Steamboat will stay, which is infuriating to Jericho. And then we get a hint that maybe Steamboat will finally stand up for himself. Maybe he'll finally stand up for himself because he announces to Jericho that he will defend the championship against MVP on Sunday night at Judgment Day, one-on-one. Backlash was the Fatal 4-Way. This is the one-on-one match with MVP. And here's the clincher. Steamboat will be the referee. And then the fans are all like, okay, Steamboat's finally going to grow some balls. He's finally going to retaliate against Jericho if Jericho gets out of line. This is great. This is wonderful. We're finally going to get the end of this Jericho bullshit. Judgment Day comes. Steamboat is the referee. And he gets all the abuse hurled at him. Every time MVP gets kicks out of a near fall, Steamboat gets a slap. he gets pushed down. All this stuff happens to him, and the fans are just aching for him. Come on, Steamboat, fight back, do something about this. He just doesn't do it. And then I think by the end of it, Jericho is clearly won. He's going for the cover. Steamboat pauses. Do I want to disqualify him for all this abuse, or will I just end this match now? He has this agonizing moment, and then 1, 2, 3, and Jericho retains. So that's the first 2 months of this. There'll be a little more to come, but I got through a good bit in this video, and I will go through some more in part 3, which will not be up immediately after it. I'm just gonna, but I'll have all this done hopefully by the end of the weekend. Alright, peace out, bye bye.